Okay, this is chapter 6.1, drawing three-dimensional figures or 3D figures. And there's several things. A three-dimensional figure or solid has length, width, and depth. It has three directions. A polyhedron, poly just means three or more or many, okay, is a three-dimensional figure whose faces are all polygons. And a polygon is a closed figure, at least three sides or more. So triangles, squares, pentagon, hexagons are all polygons. But a polyhedron is a three-dimensional figure whose faces are polygons. So if that makes any sense, there's faces on each one of these. These are all prisms. So we have a list of things that we're going to look at: prisms, pyramids, cylinders, and cones. You have to be able to draw them, you have to be able to recognize them, and you need to be able to work with them. But there are triangular prisms, rectangular prisms. This cube is kind of like a prism, a pentagonal prism, and a hexagonal prism, and many other kinds of prisms, not prisons. And you just have to be able to recognize the difference between a prism and a pyramid and a cylinder, etc. Well, this is relatively easy. There's a shape here. It's a triangle, and it's kind of called the base. This face is called a base. Each side is a base, and because there's a triangle at the top or at the back and a triangle at the bottom or at the front, depends on how you're looking at this. You can see it different ways. Typically the solid lines are the ones that you can see, and the dotted lines are the ones that are behind that you can't see. So you have to focus your eyes, because you can look at this and see different things depending on what your brain does with it. And this triangle is a base, and the other triangle is the other base. And it's almost like this triangle got stretched and pulled apart like a tube, but instead of being round, it's triangular shaped. And this is a rectangle that has been stretched out. Okay, it has been pulled, and this one is maybe the easiest to see. It's a pentagon, and there's two pentagons at each base, and it's been like stretched and pulled apart, so it makes a long prism. So whatever shape it is, at the bases is what you call it. Triangle is a triangular prism. A rectangle is a rectangular prism. Pentagon is a pentagonal prism, etc. Okay, so we can count faces or sides. We can count vertices or corners. We can count edges. And you may have to do that. You have to be able to draw these as well. All right, so there's ways to do that. We're going to start by drawing a rectangular prism, and that's just, you make a rectangle. You start by drawing a rectangle, and you use a ruler. You do it as well as you can, and then you draw an identical rectangle, as close to identical as possible, in another place. Okay, so these are the two bases of the rectangular prism. And then you just connect the corners. This corner matches with this corner. This corner matches with this corner. This corner matches with this corner. Now I can see some of these lines, and some of these lines I technically can't see unless it's a clear see-through rectangular prism. And so you want to make sure that you make dotted lines on the places you can't see. And I'm not sure how to do that, because that's going to be too big. So this is a dotted line. You can probably do this a little better than me. That's a dotted line because I can't see it. And this one in the back is a dotted line. And I can see the top. I can see these edges on the bottom, but I can't actually see the bottom. I have to kind of imagine that it's there. Okay, so that's how you do it. That's the first step. We're going to take a quick pause while I set up, get you ready for the next step, which I think is pyramids. We'll talk about the difference between a pyramid and a prism. Okay, this next shape is a pyramid, and that's Pyramid. And these are different than prisms because they're not stretched out. Instead of being stretched out, it's like you had a base. In this case, it's a rectangle, and all of the edges, instead of being another base that got stretched out, they all go to a point, the apex. The apex is the top. Each corner actually is called a vertex, and together they're called vertices. And so this is a rectangular pyramid. And this, because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides, would be a pentagonal pyramid. This one looks like it probably has 2, 3, 4. Oh, it has 5 sides as well, so it's also a pentagonal pyramid. And you can kind of see through this one. This is the standard way to do it with the dotted lines. Anything that you cannot see. Okay, so you cannot see this vertical line or these two base lines. And over here is the same thing. You can't see two of the sides and one of the vertical lines, but you can see several others. Now, if you want to draw one of these, you just draw your base again. You just let's try drawing a triangular one. We're going to just draw a base like this. This is a triangle, and then we put an apex somewhere, and then we connect everything to it. Now, on a triangular pyramid, there's only one line you can't see, and so that means you've got to erase. Oh, we got to pick the right eraser. The one that you can't see, or you're going to make it a dotted line or a dashed line. That's the one you can't see. So that's all there is to it. Sometimes the rectangular pyramids make a little more sense, and if you're drawing one, that's all I would expect you to do. Now, you could put your apex anywhere, but it might end up looking weird if you those lines are very close together, and it just happens to be the way I drew it. You can get it so that the lines are farther apart if you draw your base just right, but you can still see it. This one, for some reason, because of the way I drew it, you can see all of the vertical edges. The only thing you can't see again is this back edge. Okay? So that's how you draw a pyramid. I'm going to pause it again and get ready for cylinders. Okay, I've got two figures here. Instead of just having one, I went ahead and picked out two. The first is the cylinder. And it has height, and it has a radius because it has a circle. But again, this is the base, and the other base is down on the bottom. And this the lateral surface is this part that goes around, like the outside of the tin can. It's like a tin can, and the top and the bottom are the bases. The outside edge is the lateral surface. Okay, so that's what you need to know. And a cylinder is very similar to the prism, because instead of being a polygon like a rectangle or a triangle that's been stretched, it's just a circle that's been stretched. The circle at the bottom is the same as the circle at the top, and it's almost like it's just been pulled up and stretched out. And again, if you want to draw one, you just have to draw a circle and then draw another similar circle. I'm going to have a hard time getting them exactly where they be. Oh, I guess I know a little trick. Let me try. Well, that'll work. I don't even need to use my trick. And then all you have to do is connect the edge, the farthest out place you can, and you have a cylinder. And then if you want to do the same thing where you can't see a certain part, you can't see the part on the bottom back edge of the can, so you make a dotted line out of it. That's how you draw it. That's pretty simple. And a cone is a solid that has one circular base, and it's in the same way that the pyramid gathered together at an apex or a point. The cone is similar to the cylinder, but instead of having a base, two bases, it has one base and this point where the edges are gathered together. And again, it's even easier to draw. It has a vertex and one base, and it still has a lateral surface that goes around, but the lateral surface is much bigger down here and much smaller up here, and so it kind of goes to a point. Again, that's relatively obvious. You just draw a circle, then you make a point for the apex, and you connect it to these edges. And it kind of starts to look three-dimensional. Now, you almost could look like you're looking from the bottom, you're looking up into like a party hat. So like if you shaded this area kind of dark, you could kind of imagine that you're seeing up into it. Does that make sense? You're looking up into the hat. Or if you use our method of erasing, If you erase this line on the back side, then it kind of makes it feel like you're looking down onto the cone, slightly down, and you can't see the back edge. So it's sort of an optical illusion. It depends on how you're looking at it. And that's kind of up to your brain. All right, this should be a fun, easy lesson.